The newest update to Limbus Company has brought with itself two brand new Heishou identities. The two units that fill up the slots of the signature Season 6 faction this time around are Heishou Pack U-Branch Adept Heathcliff and Heishou Pack Wei Branch Don. These identities are Burn Rupture and Sinking Rupture hybrids respectively, and they combine new effects and seldom seen mechanics with established play patterns and familiar effects to add to the existing teams in this game and push them forward in their evolution. But just how good are they? Which teams should you use them on? And how do you play them for maximum efficiency? In today's video, I want to delve into all that by first looking at Heathcliff, his kit and his performance in the Burn and Rupture teams, and then doing the same to Dawn and her in Rupture and Sinking. But before we start, I have to remind you that most of my viewers are not subscribed. So if you find yourself coming back to my videos or end up enjoying this one, consider subscribing. It takes just 1 second and helps me out a lot. Without further ado, let's get to the new Heishous. We'll start with Heathcliff and his kit. I'll try to be as brief as possible, as this video covers two IDs at once and I don't want it to be too long. Heathcliff has high HP and high speed, and his sin affinities are Envy, Gluttony and Wrath, with a Gluttony defense. All of Heathcliff's skills scale with Burn and Rupture on the target, as well as Burn on Heathcliff. His first skill clashes it up to 16, applies Burn to the enemy and Heathcliff on Clash Win, and also applies Rupture and Burn with its coins. His second clashes at up to 21, also applies Burn on the enemy and Heathcliff on Clash Win, inflicts some Rupture and Burn, and the last coin gives Heathcliff more Burn, deals extra damage, and gets reused if Heathcliff has Blood Flame or less than half of his HP. His skill 3 clashes at 27, has a weight of 3 and unfocused volley, deals extra damage based on Burn on self, gets unbreakable coins and more clash power at low health, gives free Blood Flame and gives burn count after attack. The coins of the skill apply Burn to the target and Heathcliff, and make Heathcliff take damage based on his burn if he is above half health. The last coin inflicts Rupture count and deals bonus damage against all targets. Heathcliff also gets a skill 3 too when he uses his skill 3 at 20 Battle Blood Instinct. This skill clashes it up to 28 and has 3 weight with unfocused volley. It retains the effect of skill 3-1, but also deals more damage based on missing health. Gives Heathcliff Burn on Clash Win, and after attack it consumes all Battle Blood Instinct, and heals Heathcliff by consuming Burn on him if he has a lot of Burn. The coins of the skill inflict some Burn and Rupture, and the last coin of the skill gets reused if Heathcliff has 20 or more Burn or less than half of his HP. The coin also deals extra damage against all targets, and the final coin of the skill heals Heathcliff based on that extra damage. His defense is a clashable counter that gives Blood Flame and 3 burn count, while also getting a bunch of conditionals that make it an actually pretty good skill. As for his passives, Heathcliff gets 3. The first one gives Lord Honglu a bolus that makes him deal some wrath damage when dealing gluttony damage, after comboing with Heathcliff. Makes Heathcliff unable to die or get staggered by burn, and makes him get Blood Flame and some burn count when subbing in. His second passive lets him cheat death once, while healing him based on burn that he has on the following turn. The last passive requires 5 gluttony to use, and it gives him offense and defense level up based on his missing health, while also allowing Heathcliff to stack Battle Blood Instinct by clashing, hitting the enemy, taking burn damage and killing the enemy, up to 10 stacks per turn. His support passive requires 3 Wrath and 3 Gluttony, and it gives 1 Clash power up to the lowest HP percentage ally if that ally is under half health. Considering that Blood Flame is the exact same effect that you Sinclair has, the only new effect with this ID is Battle Blood Instinct. It stacks to 20 and increases Heathcliff's damage by 0.75% for each stack, and for every 10 stacks, Heathcliff gains 1 haste. So, with his kit out of the way, how good is he? Well, Heathcliff is a Rupture burn ID, so we'll be looking at him in both teams separately. First, let's start with Rupture. Heathcliff has a very high amount of coins, with 3 on his skill 1, 4 on his skill 2, 4 on his skill 3 and 5 on his skill 3 too. This is very reminiscent of U-Branch Sinclair, and much like that ID, Heathcliff's count infliction suffers because of that. His skill 1 goes -2, skill 2 goes -3, skill 3 goes -1, and skill 3-2 goes -3 again. Needless to say, placing such a heavy burden on the Rupture stack makes it pretty much impossible to slot him in as a 7th slot in a conventional 7-slot Rupture team, as he is just too negative. To make him work, you're gonna need to double slot Mao Faust and build a team that looks something like this. With the extra count, you can technically run Heathcliff in Rupture, but if you're in the Refraction Railway, where you're forced to pick every sinner, or are morally righteous and don't want to give the strongest unit twice as many slots, or you simply don't want to reset a gazillion times, I would advise against putting him on a 7-slot team. That being said, he can also occupy the same niche as his U-Branch brother, sitting in slot 8 and waiting to strike when the fight nears its conclusion. So what does Heathcliff provide if you do slot him in? Well, his coin count is very high, so he can take advantage of Rupture on the enemy repeatedly, dealing tons of damage. Speaking of damage, his physical output is also very high, getting amped by the extra sin damage on his skills and the scaling damage buffs from Battle Blood Instinct and his passive. He also gets AoE through Unfocused Volley with an effect that damages multiple targets at once, so he can be used against groups. Outside of this, that's kind of it. Heathcliff's ramp is pretty slow, with him taking around 3 turns to get 20 stacks of his resource for his skill 3 too, and longer than that if you want to get that skill's 5th coin. With how fast Rupture usually kills things, it means that Heathcliff often doesn't get to show his true strength. Also, most of Heathcliff's self-burn comes from clashing with the enemy, and as Rupture already has a good amount of clash-reliant identities, this means that at times he can be denied self-burn, resulting in an even slower 5-coin setup. In burn though, Heathcliff is a bit more interesting. His strength for this team are his high damage and actually good burn infliction with Blood Flame, as his coin count matters a lot less without an on-hit status effect. Heathcliff's weaknesses also change when you swap the team that you use him on, as the 5 gluttony cost of his passive becomes something that greatly slows down Heathcliff's ramp, as not only burn greatly lack gluttony, but any attempts to add it into the team result in potentially slowing down the fueling of Magic Bullet Otis, which is the single most important ego in burn. Another weakness unique to burn are his sins, as gluttony and envy are not the resources you need to fuel any of the burn egos, and Heathcliff lacks pride and lust to help with Magic Bullet. However, that doesn't mean that Heathcliff is bad in burn. In fact, he's still really good. Simply placing him on the team gives you a unit with good damage and burn, but a much more unique approach consists of pairing him up with Lord Honglu and the other rooster in the 8th slot. With a team like this, you can keep spamming Honglu's counter, which cycles the two roosters, effectively turning Honglu's action into a U-branch skill 1 and skill 3 at the same time, while the rooster that's on field can still attack normally. Both identities have passives that give them Blood Flame when they sub in, meaning that their burn infliction will always be good, and the damage that they deal is also great. This cycle strategy is quite strong, and I would recommend using Heathcliff in burn with a team like this. One thing to note though is that this threat doesn't work in Railway, as you're forced to take more sinners into the fight, which screws up the continuous cycling. Next up, we have Heishou Pack Wei Don Quixote. Once again, we'll start with her kit. Don has high HP, high speed and a high defense level. Her sin affinities are Lust, Gluttony and Gloom, with a Gluttony defense. All of Don's skills scale with Rupture and Sinking on the target. Her first rolls up to 15, deals extra damage into Shatter Mark and inflicts some Rupture and Sinking count and potency. Her second rolls up to 22, and the last coin becomes unbreakable and gets stronger based on the amount of burgeoning of horns on Dawn. The coins inflict some Sinking and Rupture, and the last coin deals extra slash damage based on Dawn's resource. Dawn's third skill rolls up to 24, and deals more damage based on Dawn's resource at combat start. On use, it provides 3 burgeoning of horns to Dawn. The coins of the skill inflict some Sinking and Rupture, and the last one deals more damage based on panic type changing effects on the enemy, while also dealing bonus slash damage, with the damage getting stronger if the target has Shatter Mark. On hit, the coin inflicts Shatter Mark next turn, and if the enemy has panic changing effects, it inflicts extra Sinking count. Dawn's defense is a simple clashable counter that gives her resource and inflicts a bit of Rupture and Sinking. As for Dawn's passives, she has 2. The first one grants Honglu a bolus that makes him inflict 1 Sinking whenever he inflicts Rupture with his skills, up to 3 times per turn. It also grants Dawn her resource when she subs in. The second passive requires 3 Gloom and Gluttony owned, and it makes Dawn deal extra damage to low SP enemies, as well as enemies with a lot of Rupture and Sinking. The second part of this effect gets doubled against enemies with no sanity, to make up for the loss of the first part against those enemies. Also, when Dawn has her unique resource, she deals 15% more damage with the last coin of her base skills. If she is hitting a slot equipped with a defense, this damage buff gets doubled. Also, Dawn gets 3 clash power against clashable guards. As for her support passive, it costs 3 Gloom and Gluttony owned, and it allows the fastest ally to inflict defense level down against enemies with 2 or more Rupture or Sinking count, up to 2 times per turn. There are 2 unique effects that Dawn works with. The first one is Burgeoning of Horns, which stacks up to 3, loses 1 stack at turn end, and makes Dawn inflict 1 more Rupture and Sinking with her base skills. The second effect is Shatter Mark, and it makes enemies take 10% more damage from Gloom and Gluttony skills. Inflicts the Shatter Mark panic type against enemies with SP, and lowers the clash power of enemies without SP by 1. At turn end, the effect loses 1 stack, and inflicting it again does not stack the value, replacing it instead. The Shatter Mark panic effect lowers the enemy's clash power and defense level, leaving them more open. With Don's kit out of the way, we can look at her performance in her signature teams. We'll begin with Rupture, where Don isn't exactly special. Don's coin count is quite high, but not as abnormal as a U-branch identity. Her skills are also similarly quite count negative, but not as count negative as a U-branch identity. Her damage is good, but not as good, you get it by now. Wei Don is a midpoint between the high ceiling of a U-branch identity and the safety of a different contender for the slot. She can be utilized in the Rupture team in the same way as you, Heathcliff, or can be brought in from backup, as her passive provides her with her resource when Don subs in. However, she's just not going to perform as well as Heathcliff in either situation, so there's no reason to use her like that. Bringing her as a 7th slot in a more conventional Rupture team is also difficult without needing to get more count-friendly options, as while Don is not as negative as the Roosters, her kit is still never even neutral. This leads to Don not really having a way to put herself into the Rupture team, despite not being a bad idea at all. Realistically, she just lacks a concrete gimmick to give her a specific niche, like the count spam of the mouse or the coin spam of the use. Her effect tries to combat this, but it's not at the level of Deathrite or Concussion. It really is just Gloom and Gluttony Fragility for 3 turns every 6 turns. The one saving grace for Dawn is her Red Sheet Ego, which is a great damage stick, gets fueled by Wei Don perfectly, and can hit AoE, meaning she can potentially find use in encounters like that. Also, the extra slash damage on her skills can come in handy when dealing with staggered enemies often, as it becomes much more useful like that, by double dipping into enemy resistances. But honestly, the idea is much more promising in syncing. In this team, Dawn once again is a unit that can proc the effect a lot at the cost of count. However, with a monster like Knight Rodion and an effect like Echoes of the Manor around, the issue of Dawn's count is not an issue at all. Besides, her skill 3 can actually go positive in syncing count, unlike Rupture. With strengths like this, I think it's pretty obvious that Dawn benefits greatly from Solemn Lament Yisang being the win condition for your syncing team, as she doesn't bring much value to Spicebush, because she's count negative and doesn't inflict much potency either. But in Solemn Lament syncing, she is fantastic, and easily makes it onto the team. You can replace the slot that previously went to Honglu with her, and that will directly make the team better. Dawn not only gets a lot of procs on this team while not putting strain on the syncing stack, but her damage also gets increased, as she now easily gets her SP based conditional in her passive, and the panic type conditional in her skill 3 actually becomes a thing. Other than this, there really isn't much else to say about Dawn. She's an extremely straightforward identity, whose job it is to hit things a lot. All you need to do with her is keep targeting the enemy's defensive skills, while also replacing her skill 1 with her defense to keep the resource stack high for her other skills. That's literally it. They made a good Solemn Lament syncing identity and you should use her. Also, she's very cute, by far my favorite Dawn design so far. With this, my very late review of the new Heishou identities comes to an end. Both IDs hit enemies a lot and waste a lot of count, and both IDs perform really well in their secondary teams, which is always great to see when Rupture is already omega overloaded with content. Overall, I'd recommend you to pick up both of these identities for the respective secondary teams, but if your goal is to build Rupture, you can skip both of them, and you won't be missing out on much. Anyways, I have to hop back on Alloyed Collective. The DLC is so fun that it delayed this video by 2 whole days. So yeah, if you disagree or have something to add, feel free to leave a comment below and I might read it and respond. If you enjoyed the video at any point, leave a like to let me know. And if you want to see more like this, consider subscribing. Thank you so much for watching and I hope to see you again soon. Goodbye!